So now we're going to look at a partner who has a strong crossface. We looked at kipping, we looked at overhead kipping, we looked at kipping over a shoulder, we looked at side-to-side kipping, and we looked at side kipping out to the side. Now let's look at take a deeper look at what our hand should be doing relative to our partner's hip and knee position. This is especially important when our partner punches underhooks in. Whenever I see that I have the inside elbow position on my partner relative to her knees, I take 2 straight hip posts where my hand comes straight up and I post my partner's hip, my hand comes straight up and I post my partner's hip. So in the event that I see my partner has to be mounted and I have the inside elbow position relative to my partner's knees, whether it's here or whether she's sprawled out, anytime I have my elbows and rib cage connected, anytime my elbows are inside my partner's knees, we take a straight hip post like so. Now, let's say my partner, for whatever reason, whether she has an underhook or not, she dominates the inside position with her knees. This means that, number one, I can't go into knee elbow escapes. So in order for me to go into any kind of knee elbow escape, I have to first get an elbow to the inside position. That means I have to take a cross hip post, and from here I have to bridge and take an elbow to the inside position. Okay, so understand that you cannot go into any kind of knee elbow escapes unless you have the inside elbow position. Okay, and this should be obvious because if you just try to drill a knee elbow escape, the first thing you have to do is get an elbow inside. Okay, so as far as knee elbow escaping goes, if she dominates the inside real estate with her knees versus your elbows, you can't knee elbow escape. So I have to get at least one of my elbows to the inside position before I can do that. Now, in terms of kipping, when I look to start kipping, if I have my elbows outside my partner's knees, you run into slippage problems, and more importantly, you run into your partner being able to punch at underhooks right away and elevate your hands up and over your head. So whenever I see that my partner dominates the inside knee position relative to my elbows, I take a cross hip post. 1, 2, like so. So now my partner goes to punch at underhooks. It's a very difficult thing from here. And what this allows me to do now is still hit that same kipping motion where I can go out to the side. And as my partner goes to start cross-facing me and coming down heavy, she goes to put underhooks in. That's a difficult thing from here. And I can bridge, and I can kip, and I can bring my legs inside just the same. Okay? Now, understand that you're not going to have as much of a driving force with this cross of the hands as you would if you're just pushing your partner's hips off. But the whole goal of kipping isn't to push your partner away, it's just to guide your partner's hips. Right? But understand that you will have more range of motion if you have straight hip posts rather than if you have cross hip posts. Okay? So whenever I see my partner dominates the inside position with her knees, I go in and I take cross hip post like so. Or at least one cross hip post on the side that I'm trying to avoid the underhook. If my partner has an underhook, like so, the main danger now is she's going to take a second underhook and elevate both of my arms. So normally, when I see my partner has one underhook, like so, she'll be looking to work to high mount to get knees inside my elbows. Whenever I see that, I take this cross hip post like so, and now we start our kipping from this position. Okay? So just a deeper dive into our upper body position. In general, we're looking to keep the inside elbow position relative to our partner's knees. If we can't steal the inside position, we have to take at least one cross hip post like so. Otherwise, we're in jeopardy of having one and then 2 hands elevated up and over our head. And from this position, we can always go in and take a double cross like so. So now from here, when she goes to punch underhooks in, it's incredibly difficult, and I can immediately start going in and kipping and getting these inside just as easily. All right, so let's say now that we want to clear an underhook, and our kip maybe isn't developed yet. We just want to free an underhook when my partner puts an underhook in. How can we do this? So this time she goes in, she puts an underhook in, she gets a crossface, and we're in a situation like so. This is starting to be a relatively bad position for us. So what I want to look to do from this position is I want to look to take my hand across my torso by bridging and giving small incremental bumps to just scoot my hand across like so. Now, I don't want to be cross hip for this. I want to be more up right underneath my partner's chest, near her ribcage stomach area. So that from here, I can give a strong bridge out and over to my right side, and I can point
my hand out towards out and over my right shoulder. As I go to bridge, I just limp my arm free with the intention of getting my right elbow inside of her left elbow. This cross frame here will create a disconnection between my chest and her chest. So when she goes to hold on tight, she will have to base her hand out and away in order for her not to fall over. And as she does, and as she either bases the hand out or moves the elbow out far enough where my elbow can come into the inside. So I give a strong bridge. As I do so, I create a lifting action with my left elbow, and I take my elbow back to the inside like so. Now, once I have my elbow in the inside, we can play a game where we go right into a kipping escape, and we can go out and start our escapes from there, which is what we're going to do next. Let's say my kipping sucks, whatever the case is, I don't want to kip, I just want to free my arm and go into the elbow escapes. This is the way we do it. We take a hand across, 1, 2, 3. We get a hand up nice and high by her chest. As she goes to hold on tight, I just give a strong bridge into a concave position. So I bridge first, and then I concave and I limp the arm out. I have to have a full extension and then full contraction. Otherwise, the crossface will keep my elbow stuck. So I give a strong bridge, I lift with the left elbow, and I go bridge to concave shoulders. She goes to hold on tight. And now there's no crossface in place anymore, and we can start all of our escapes. In case it's just very basic, my partner puts the underhook in, and we bridge up and over her shoulder, clear the underhook, and we have the inside position ready to work into whatever escapes you guys want.
Now we're going to look at going into a kip as soon as we free an underhook. Okay, because of the fact that I'm bridging across to one side and I'm getting my partner off balance and I'm getting a knee off the floor, the second I go into an escape where I pull my elbow down, that's your cue to go right into a kipping escape. Now, how you go into a kipping escape when your partner has an underhook is going to be completely contingent upon your partner's knee position relative to your elbow. If you have your elbow inside your partner's hip, then you can post a straight hip post on your partner. You can bridge, and then you can bring the underhook hand in, post that hand in the hip, and then use a traditional kip to kip on out. If you feel that your partner's moving to a higher mount and she has the underhook and you feel like you can't get a good post on the hip, you use a cross hip post. And then as the underhook hand comes out, you post a second hand on the hip and then you use a kip like that. So whenever I see my partner has an underhook, like so, how you're going to escape is you're going to start with one of two hand positions. If I feel my partner sprawling, like so, I usually use a straight hip post like so. If I see my partner's knees are in, like so, and she's working up towards a higher mount, and I feel like I can't get a post on the hip, I start with the hip, my hand across, like so. In addition, if you feel that your partner is so good that it's going to be hard to bridge and get your arm free, you feel like it's going to be hard to create enough kazushi to pull your elbow out, I generally prefer a cross hip post because of the fact that I can use this to create a separation in my chest and my partner's chest. You won't be able to do that as much by just posting on your partner's hip. So the general game is if I see I have the inside elbow position, I use a straight hip post. If she has the inside knee position, or if I'm having a hard time clearing this initial underhook by just bridging and trying to do kipping like I normally would, and I feel like an underhook is just not, I can't clear the underhook, then I generally take a cross hip post. Okay? Most of the time, when your partner elevates an arm up over your head, she's going to be looking to start going into high mounted positions where she fights the knee to the inside position, and then she either works towards a karagatame or she looks to start taking a second underhook up in place. And one of the great ways that I can counter a second underhook coming up into place is by initially taking a cross hip post like so. So now when she goes to put an underhook in, not impossible, but much harder. Okay? So we're going to start bridging out to one side. So I do the same thing I just did before, and I free my left hand. As I free my left hand, notice my partner's left knee, the knee closest to you guys. The knee now is off the floor. So from here, I take my hand inside, and I immediately move into that concave position.
When she goes to bring everything back down, I just kip. My legs come inside, and now we can go into an easy escape. So she's an underhook and a crossface, this time on the opposite side. She puts everything up high like so. From here, with a cross post, bridge, I get everything across. Now from here, I give a strong bridge. The second I bridge and my elbow comes inside, immediately go into a kip. And we're out. This time, I use a straight hip post. I bridge. The second the underhook comes out, I go to another straight hip post, and I go right into a kip. So I bridge. As soon as the underhook comes out, from here, I just take two hands in like so. And now from here, my two knees come in. As she goes to start bringing everything back to center, I kip, and I take my partner out and away. If you feel that your partner, again, feels the kip coming, and she pushes her weight, as the underhook comes out, she pushes her weight back towards your hips, just go into a side kip, okay? So in the event, this is getting advanced now, this time, I free the underhook. As I'm going to free the underhook, I go to start kipping. She puts two hands on the floor and pushes back. I side kip this time, and I bring my legs inside. Most of the time, what you'll be doing is pulling yourself back to center and coming towards your head again to crowd the head. So that makes an overhead or over shoulder kip much easier. So as she has the underhook in place, you go from a bridge, you free the elbow, and you immediately go into a kip. As I go to do this, she goes to recover mount. It's going to be incredibly difficult. And we're in, ready to go into all of our follow-up attacks with our offensive cycle. Okay? So this time, we free the underhook right off immediately. As soon as the underhook comes out, your partner immediately has to post hands on the floor, or at least widen the elbow. We go right to the hips. We frame the hips, kip, and the knees come inside. Now we're getting very advanced. This time my partner has an underhook and a crossface, and I bridge and I kip to one side, but I feel that my partner is doing a great job of keeping the underhook in place, and I have to start going side to side. So what happens is, I bridge to one side, I almost get the underhook free, but my partner keeps the underhook in place, and I feel like I can't kip with one hand. So what ends up happening is, I bridge to one side, the underhook doesn't come out, I start kipping, and now from here, as she goes to drive back, I have to go in and I have to start kipping to the other side to bring legs back to the inside position. Okay? Most of the time, what will happen is your partner will lock up strong on the underhook, and as you go side to side, either your underhook hand will come out or the crossface will slip off. Okay? And if the crossface slips off, it's a pretty easy thing to bring your hands and head back to the inside position. So when I go to kip side to side, I'm always going to use a cross post from here. The reason being, if I bridge to one side and I start kipping, and now I have to start kipping to the other side, I have nothing posting on my partner's hip on this side. So I can't push or create any drive across my partner's hips. When I have a cross hip post, like so, I have some degree of control over my partner's left hip, here. Okay, so this means that I dominate my partner's shoulder line a little bit better. So whenever I'm looking to kip side to side versus an underhook, I always use this cross hip post. So now, as my partner goes to lock up, I'm going to start bridging to one side. I kip, I feel like it fails, and I move to the other side. And I'm looking to either clear my underhook or my crossface, the and bring my elbow back to the inside position. So I bridge, I start kipping. Now I feel like it fails. She goes to recover, I kip, and the crossface comes off. Once the crossface comes off, my elbow comes inside, and now it's the easiest thing in the world to bring legs back to the inside position and start to work from there. Normally, what will happen is if you're going and you're kipping towards the side of the underhook hand will come off. If you're kipping towards the side of the crossface will slip off. So you go back and forth until either the underhook comes out or the crossface comes off. So we play a game where she's locked up tight, and I go kipping side to side. I go back and forth. And from here, we're out and we're free. Once again. She has to hold on tight. And we're out
and we're free. So we go side to side. Kipping with the underhook is much harder to do because you only have one hand now, and your partner's elongating your body. But this is like working towards mastery now. Your partner has an underhook, and you kip with one hand across your partner's hip, one hand elevated over the head, and you kip side to side. When you go towards the underhook side, you're trying to free the elbow. When you're going towards the crossface side, you're trying to slip your head inside the crossface and underneath your partner's chest. Anything to get your partner's hands posted on the floor is money in the bank, because now your hands can come back inside and post on your partner's hips in various ways. All right, so this kipping from side to side with an underhook, it's the same concept if your partner switches to one knee up and blocks you from initially moving out and away, or puts the long hook in and makes it so it's hard for you to move around. This is pretty common when you bridge. As you go to bridge to one side, it's a very common thing if you have an underhook and a crossface. As you get a bridge out to one side, it's a very common thing for your partner to create a disconnect in the hips. Bridge the other way. Create a disconnect in the hips, where from here, as she goes to bridge, you go to bridge across and shrimp out and away. Where from here, I create a disconnect in the hips, so the bridge has less effect. And now when she goes to start kipping out to her right, there's no kip out to the right. But I can start kipping across in the opposite direction. It's a pretty common thing. When I go to start bridging, my partner will alleviate the pressure of the bridge by, one, either switching your hips and putting a long hook in place, like so, or stepping a leg up. Whenever I see a long hook comes in or a knee comes up, I just kip back to the other side, as I did in the previous series. So I bridge, a long hook comes in. The second I see this, the hands stay locked. The second I see this from here, I immediately, as my partner goes to recenter, I start kipping out in this direction. If I don't clear the crossface, now from here, my partner goes to recenter, and now we're just in a back and forth battle of kipping out to the side, like we just did in the previous segment, where my partner has two knees down, and we just convert the long hook into a regular mount with an underhook, and by bridging side to side, and getting my partner's knee position out of place, and going into escapes like so. If my partner has a one knee up, she steps the knee up, I feel like the bridge is not going to be working, I can't start kipping, I just whip my legs back, and I start kipping in the opposite direction. If the crossface doesn't slip off, she goes to drive the knee down. I go back to the other side. Now the underhook comes out, and from here, we bring the knees back inside. So whenever I see my partner switch to leg positions to one of the previous leg positions while having an underhook and a crossface, that's fine. I use the same exact kipping motion. I start with the bridge to one side, and I kip across to the other side. And then, as your partner goes to recenter, their knees will just naturally convert back to a regular mounted position, and then you just work side to side as we just did in the previous clip to free the underhook or to free the elbow on the underhook side, or to clear the crossface on the crossface side. So if your partner switches leg positions, start with a bridge to one side, start kipping to the opposite side. Instead of traditionally you bridge to the one side, and as you bridge, you immediately start kipping. This time you bridge, and then you misdirect to the opposite side. You start kipping on the opposite side, and then you just go back and forth between the two until you get either the crossface clear or the elbow inside. Everything comes back inside, and then you can regard. All right, so whenever my partner gets double underhooks now, this is a real issue, and what we're trying to do is convert double underhooks back to just one underhook. So we're looking to free one of our arms. So whenever my partner moves into a double underhook scenario, and she starts walking up into a situation where she's either sprawled, like so, or my partner has a high mount, whatever the case is, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to bring my arms back down below my shoulder line. Now, if I just try to pull my elbows below my shoulder line, it's never going to work, right? It's the weight of her body, the extension of her hips versus my ability to pull my elbows down. So maybe I would be able to pull my elbows down against her, but she would not be able to pull her elbows down against me.
You cannot.
I can definitely do that because I'm jacked.
Try it again.
I'm too strong for this sport. But if we switch positions, there's no way she'd be able to do this against me. So from this position, I just put tension in my elbows and I pull them down slightly. And now I just put my feet in towards my butt and I just walk. And every time I walk backwards, I just raise one shoulder. I just walk my shoulders backwards along the mat. So as my partner goes to keep the double underhooks up, I don't pull her elbows down. I just move my body up and away. So as she goes to keep those underhooks elevated, I just pull my arms down like so. And now the second I get my elbows below my partner's shoulder line, I pommel one of my hands to the inside position, to a cross shoulder post. Once one of my hands is in a cross shoulder post, it's a pretty easy thing from here to give a bridge across, and as I bridge across, my partner will have to post a hand to not get rolled over. If I trap my partner's foot, if I trap my partner's arm, and you do like a basic jiu-jitsu 101 bridge and roll that you never really see work on anyone, your partner will fall over, okay? I use this as a threat to get my partner to base out. And as she goes to base out, the elbow comes inside, okay? So whenever I see my partner have double underhooks, I want to get to this position here. Once I get to this position, I play a game where I either, one, pinch my partner's arm and I force her to rip it out, and then my elbow's inside, or if I feel like my partner's not going to pull the arm out and I feel like I still can't free my arm, I just bridge and I limp arm out by straightening my arm. Like so. And now I have a hand inside, and now I have at least one hand in my partner's hip. And in addition, my partner has an underhook, but I have a cross shoulder post in place versus having her have a full underhook and cross face. So now from here, when I go to kip, it'll be much easier because of the fact that I can use my left hand to start elevating my partner up and over my shoulders. So when she actually goes to control me from here, it's much easier to get the elbow inside because I have that one piece of inside real estate. So whenever I see my partner has double underhooks, I'm looking to make a conversion to a single underhook. So she goes in, she locks up underhooks like so, and from here, she starts stretching me out. Even if she's sprawling her hips back, it's a pretty easy thing from here to just start pulling my elbows down, and I just walk, and I pull my elbows down like so. From here, one hand comes to the inside position. Doesn't matter which one. And now I just bridge out to a side, either pinching over my partner's elbow, forcing her to rip it out, or I just relax my arm, and even if she keeps that underhook, I just limp the arm inside. Now I go either to a straight hip post or to a cross hip post. Normally, probably I would go to a cross hip post because she's going to be trying to reinsert the underhook right away. I would make this hard for her, and now I go right into a kipping motion, and we move out and away. So I see from here, my partner starts to put heat on me and starts to go in and elongate my arms up and over my head. When I see this, I immediately start to walk my hips back and away. If I'm just going to pull my elbows down, it's going to be difficult. So from here, I put tension running through the elbows, and I just walk my shoulders down and away. Okay, so that it's the movement of my body versus the lock of her hands. And it's going to be hard for her to win that battle. Now from here, hands come inside, I bridge, one elbow comes in, I start my kip, and we move out and away, and we're free. So whenever I see my partner has double underhooks from mount, I look to convert to a situation where she has one underhook, and I have one hand on the inside position to get to my partner's hips, monitor the hips, and start my kips. So when we have an opponent who's in a high mount, they can have a couple of different hand position or upper body positions. They can have no control over your head and arm. They can have one underhook, or they can have two underhooks. Your partner is wise to go into high mount scenarios, especially when the person on the bottom is super explosive. Because when they move to a high mount position, they have the inside knee position, and they have a disconnection of their hips and their partner's hips. The further you move towards your partner's shoulders with your hips, the less ability your partner will have to off-balance you with a bridge. So whenever I see my partner is in a high-mounted situation where her knees are up high by my armpits, she can have a high mount where she's moving up like so. She can have a high mount where she has a cross face and an underhook where one arm is elevated like so. Or she can have two arms elevated up high, and now she can drive her knees up very high and start to work into Jujigatame situations and go from there, okay? So whenever I see this, because of the fact that my partner's hips are so high on me, it's going to be hard to kip from here. If I try to bridge to get one of my partner's weight onto one of my partner's knees, even if I have a double hip post or double cross hip like so, it's going to be difficult to get my partner's weight onto one knee because the bridge has almost no effect. And then I try to kip, and it turns into a disaster. Okay, the good news is, because you can take two hip posts in your partner, or even one hip post, I can easily convert my partner back down to a low mount. So whenever I see this, my partner has hands on the floor, she has no control, she brings her knees up nice and high. I just put my 2 feet on the floor, I wedge my partner in place, and as I extend my arms slightly, I just shoulder walk backwards. When she goes to follow me, now I just convert her to a low hip scenario, and now we go into all the previous moves. So it's a pretty easy thing to convert a high mount into a traditional low mount and bring elbows back inside or go into kips and knee elbow escapes. If my partner, on the other hand, has a hand elevated and she brings the knees up high, now it's going to be hard to kip once again. Because again, I can't get weight onto one knee. I can't create a strong kazushi with a bridge. So whenever I see this, I just take a cross hip post like so, and I put tension running through my underhook arm. So my right elbow is going to put tension down over my partner's back. When she goes to start locking up and put a cross face in, when she goes to keep me in this position, I just again shoulder walk, and I convert my partner back down to a low mount, and I put her hips right back over mine. So now there's a strong hip-to-hip connection, and now when I bridge, I can legitimately get kazushi and get weight onto one of her knees. If she's high mounted on me, and I go to bridge and get weight to one knee, it's a difficult thing. But you feel like the kip is never going to work from there. Okay? So I just convert her back to a low mount, where now from here, kipping will have a real effect. And now, the hardest of them all is a double underhook scenario, where my partner has 2 hands elevated up high over my head like so, and she coming forward, and she has knees inside my armpits, even higher than that. And from here, she's looking to go into Jujigatame. From this position, because she has a wedge on top of my head with her hands, I cannot move into a situation where I bridge and I shoulder walk backwards. If she's in a low mount, my hands are over my head, she doesn't have the range to effectively connect her hands and hold them over my head. I can always pull the hands down. So she has to lock her hands underneath my neck, like so. So now when I go to bridge, I can bring the hands down and away. But when she's in a high mount, now when she goes to lock her hands, she can wedge her hands right over the crown of my head. So when I go to pull my hands down, number one, all of my partner's upper body weight is right over my elbows from here. So even if you were much stronger than your partner, like for me to try to pull my elbows down like I did before as a joke, it's going to be much, much harder to do. It's not going to be impossible if you're way, way stronger, but it's going to be drastically harder. And in addition, when I go to shoulder walk backwards, you can't go anywhere because your head is wedged in place. You can't bridge to go into a kip because you can't get sufficient hip-to-hip connection. So from here, I play an insertion game rather than a bridging and off-balancing game. If my partner has this position, I know that at some point she's going to make a transition to a Jujigatame on one of my arms. It's pretty much her only option from this immediate hand position. So from here, I just wait for my partner to bring her legs into position, and as she goes to make a switch into Jujigatame, I just insert my knee in between my partner's tailbone. So from here, as she goes to start making this switch, I know that her hips are going to move out to my right side. So as she goes to make that switch, I just take my knee up, and I just take my knees, and I walk them up my partner's buttocks. If your partner makes a mistake, and she makes too much of a separation between her hips and your chest, your knee will just come in. But a talented opponent won't make that mistake. So instead, I bring my knees up. As she goes to make the transition, I close my knee, and as I close, I extend. As I close, I extend, and I wipe my partner's butt cheeks out and away from my body until I can get the knee inserted inside my partner's tailbone. So as she goes to make the transition, I get a knee inside, and now when she goes to control me or switch to a juji, everything comes back inside, and we can escape. This is a tough one here. So from here, I make space for my partner's hips and my torso by closing and extending my knee against each one of my partner's buttocks until eventually my knee can come inside. So she extends my arms over my head, like so. And from here, there's no way I can bridge and off-balance her. There's no way that I can pull my elbows down. So it's going to be tough from here. So I just play a waiting game. I know she's going to switch to a juji. As she goes to switch to a juji, my legs come up. They go 1, 2, 3, and then knees come to the inside position, and we can win this battle. So from this angle, we're in front here. She gets everything elevated up nice and high. My legs come up to monitor my partner's hips. She's locked up tight. She's locked up tight. As she goes to make the transition, knees come inside, and now we can go into recovery as my partner goes to make the switch. That one is tough, and you have to be precise, and it takes a while to get used to. That's your best chance. If someone elevates both of your hands over your head, it's hard to bridge them over to get them off balance. It's hard to pull the elbows down. It's generally best to bring knees inside when you feel like none of the other options are working. All right, so now let's look at a situation where we make a mistake and we get a hand passed across and my partner locks a back, head, and arm. I'm not going to go into katagatame defenses because it's going to be in strangle escape, so that's why I'm not dealing with that. I'm going to make a whole course on strangle escape, so I'm going to go into early and late escapes for katagatame, so that's why it's not in here. But back takes and stuff like that, we can dip into a little bit. So whenever I turn too far and my partner gets to a back, head, and arm position, understand that in order for my partner to expose my back, my elbow has to cross beyond her center line. If it doesn't, there's no back exposure. That's why I'm disciplined with my frames. Whenever I go to expose my back, I make sure that my elbow never crosses the center line. But let's say for whatever reason, my elbow crosses the center line and my partner starts to go in and lock a figure four back, head, and arm, or a back, head, and arm. The first thing I do is when I feel my partner is exposing my back and the hand's coming in, the first thing I'm looking to do is I'm looking to pommel my right hand to the inside and intercept my partner's wrist. So now I extend my head back and away, and I move my partner's hands as far away as I can. So when she goes to lock them, it's difficult. So the first thing I want to do is I never want to bring my arm up so my bicep and my ear join together. This is a disaster. I want to disconnect my arm and my head the best I can, and I want to look to intercept my partner's arm as it comes through. Like so. Whether it's here or whether I grab it doesn't really make a difference, as long as I block it. And now from here, as my partner goes to connect her hands, I'm just going to come through and I'm just going to slip my elbow back to the inside position. And now, as my elbow comes inside, I just turn, my elbow comes across, and now we're back in business. Okay? In order for my partner to actually expose my back, yes, the elbow is across the center line. But if she can't get her elbow inside and underneath mine, she can't take my back from here. It's going to be very hard. So from here, as she goes to expose my back, I take the inside position, and now when she goes to connect those hands, we just take everything inside, and from here, we recover. In the event that my partner actually connects her hands, what I can accept is a back, head, and arm. But what's even worse is a figure four back, head, and arm, where she actually grabs my wrist and grabs her own wrist like so. So from here, she locks an initial back, head, and arm, and you have a couple seconds here. Your partner can sit and go into back takes, and then you're kind of working on back escapes rather than mount and pin escapes. But you have a few seconds to strip some grips here. So from here, I'm going to look to go in, and I'm going to look to take a grip here on my partner's wrist. When she goes to access my wrist, I don't just leave it here for her to grab. So I physically take a grip on her wrist, so when she goes to access my wrist, it's a difficult thing from here. If at any point she opens her hands to go to grab my wrist, I just separate her hands, and now I take a hand inside and then clear the elbow. So I physically grab her wrist. So I go in like so, and I put a grip on her wrist. If at any point she separates her hands, I over-separate them further than she wanted to go. So she has to keep her hands locked from here. From this position, I just start taking my right hand to the inside position, and I take a backhand frame on my head like so. And now I start moving up my partner's forearm to bring my hand further and further away from my partner's. So when she goes to access my wrist, it's just simply not available. And now from here, she goes to lock up tight. I just walk. I take my head out of the circle, and from here I switch to an inside bicep tie where I can clear my elbow to the inside, and then I slide it across my partner's hips. So when I see my partner lock a back, head, and arm, from here the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock up and I'm going to grab her wrist. If she goes to access my wrist, I separate the hands. From this position, I pommel a hand to the inside position. Now, if she goes to grab my hand a second time, it's the easiest thing in the world to separate my partner's hands. From here, she keeps her hands locked. I go to a backhand frame like so. She goes to start working towards my wrist. It's a difficult thing. And now from here, we just go inside, we switch to an inside bicep tie, we block, and then we take everything back to the inside position. So our whole thing is to fight our elbow back to the inside. We come in, we grab the wrist. She goes to start fighting to take my back. Okay, now this is the grip where she's trying to get to a figure 4 backhead and arm before she takes my back. Understand that as this is happening, if she switches and she puts one knee up, she can sit and she can take her back, and now this is going to be an issue here. All right, but this is what you should be doing if you're in a static position and your partner doesn't immediately take your back. So we come in, we grab the wrist. She goes to start coming in and accessing my wrist. It's a difficult thing. If she goes to access my wrist, I can start separating her hands. So we take a hand to the inside, we start walking, and then we slip the elbow to the inside, and now we're free. If my partner locks a figure 4 backhand arm, when she grabs my wrist and she grabs her own wrist, okay, this is going to be more of an issue now, okay, because now I don't have any control of my hand. So the second I see this, we just come up, we grab our partner's hand like so, and now we just strip our partner's grip. So I see the figure 4 backhand arm, I can't just pull the arm out. So I physically grab over my partner's thumb, like so. She goes to hold on, and I strip the grip, and now I go back to the wrist, and we repeat the initial process that we just looked at. Okay, so anywhere from early to mid-level to late escapes, my partner goes to lock in and take my back with a back, head, and arm. Now, obviously, there's going to be more movement with the lower body, and she's going to be trying to take your back, but if she takes your back, then you got to escape the back. But if your partner is just trying to hold you in that position, it's a good way to bring the elbow back to the inside, bring it back across the center line, and then go into your mount recoveries. All right, so this time, let's stop our partner from going from mount back into side control. Now, why do we want to do that? For a simple reason that it's, once you've mastered pin escapes, it's a lot easier a lot of times to escape mount than it is to escape side control. And once you escape mount, you can go right from being in a purely defensive cycle in mount into an offensive cycle attacking your partner's legs. So another reason might be if your partner has a katagatame and they want to transition into side control in order to finish you and they can't finish you from mount. There could be a reason why you want to keep your partner in a mounted position. And you can never really keep your partner in mount. They can just stand up and walk away. But as they go to dismount, they'll create so much disconnection between their hips and yours that you can enter into some kind of ashigurami or butterfly guard. And the simplest way to do this is just to keep your knees to your chest. So my partner is always looking to swish her legs from one side to the other. So when she goes to dismount, whether she has upper body grips or not, she's looking to move from one side to the other and then flip her leg across in some kind of knee on belly and then dismount to the side control. So what I'm looking to do, I'm just keeping my knees high to my chest. If my legs are extended outright like so, and she goes to dismount, it's a pretty easy thing for her to do it. If my knees are up like so, it's a little bit harder for her to do it, but she can still do it. So she has more range. So when I feel my partner going to dismount, I just pull my knees all the way to my chest, like so. So now when she goes to dismount, her foot gets caught. In order for her to dismount, she has to come so far forward and raise her hips so far up that as she goes to dismount now, it's a pretty easy thing to take knees inside and go into some kind of ashigurami. So if my partner mounts me and they feel like, oh man, my legs are going to get attacked from here, and she puts her hands on the floor and she says, okay, let me dismount. Go ahead. We just bring our knees to our chest and we stop our partner mid-dismount and we make just enough space where we can insert a knee, but not so much where she can actually dismount and escape. Okay? So whenever I want my partner, whether she has any kind of upper body grips or not, but I don't want my partner to dismount into a side control, I always just take my knees up to my chest like so. So now as she goes to dismount, she either gets stuck or she has to come so far forwards and upwards that I can easily take my legs back to the inside position and start going into attacks on my partner, whether it be with recoveries or counterattacks. All right, so I just take my knees up to my chest, and this makes it hard for your partner to swish her legs out and over to the side. The further my knees are from my chest, the easier it is for her to move to side control. The closer my knees to my chest, the harder it is for her to move to side control. Even with a situation like where she has double underhooks, you can move to a situation where it's hard for her, and there's no reason why she would want to dismount from here, but assuming she does, it'd be hard for her to dismount without having my feet come back to the inside position. Not impossible, but hard. She goes to bring her feet to the outside, it's hard. So now she has to come so far forwards, where as she goes to dismount, I can slip a knee to the inside position, and from here, we can go in and lock ashigurami, lock butterfly guard, and go into other various setups from there.
So whenever I see you want to keep someone stuck in mount, or you feel like someone's trying to dismount and you want to go into attacks, just pull your knees to your chest. That will make sure that they have to come so far forward and raise the hips so high that as they go to dismount, you can slip a knee in the middle, split the legs, and go into your regards or counterattacks. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This is another pretty long instructional. You see how there's a limit on how much you can systematize these escapes. The general idea is just fighting back to inside position, getting limbs back inside, and going in some kind of at least regard, if not some kind of counterattack. When you're working in side control and working in mount, your partner has to have control, direct control over your head and your shoulders in order to attack you. Okay? When you're working in north-south, your partner doesn't have to have control over your head and shoulders to pin and attack you. So what this means is when you're working in side control and north-south, anything that can get you to a situation where your partner no longer has control over your head and shoulders, where you have an inside bicep tie, where you separate your partner's hands, where your head is underneath your partner's chest and there's no crossface, all of these are money in the bag. When you're in north-south, you're looking to bring knees and elbows together to look to spin underneath and inside your partner and put them back in front of you. Provided they're in a high tripod or you can't get your elbows into the right position, and I see that I'm just not going to be able to regard while I'm in north-south, you have to force your partner into positions that they would be in if they were in side control with their body. And that forces them to either go back to north-south. If they can't go back to north-south, then they have to make transitions where they, again, move to control of your head and shoulders, and on those transitions, we can bring everything back to the inside position. So anything that gets you back to the inside position, where your partner no longer has control of your head and shoulders, is going to get you out. We looked at full extensions versus full contractions, where I start with an initial big bridge to create some kind of kazushi, and then I move to a situation where I can clear my partner's crossface and bring everything back to the inside position. This is super, super important. We also looked at the idea of misdirection, where I start an escape in one direction and then I misdirect quickly in another direction. And as my partner goes to counter that, I misdirect back and forth from side to side or forwards and backwards, and your partner's just moving in so many different directions that eventually you can fight one limb to the inside position, 2 limbs inside, 3 limbs inside, 4 limbs inside, and before you know it, you have your partner back in guard. So playing around with these ideas, taking the techniques themselves out of it, just playing with these ideas of fighting back to the inside position and negating your partner from controlling your head and shoulders is going to go a long way. Anything that can get your head and shoulders free, and anything that can get you back to the inside position is going to be money in the bag, and that's what we're looking for as far as escapes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Thank you, Sunny, for helping out. Her knees are bleeding right now because she's been on her knees filming for we've been here for like 10 days. We filmed Passing 2.0, and then we filmed this, and this whole thing was her just in side control and north-south or mount. She's moving around on her knees the whole time. So I'm sorry for your precious little legs.
It's okay. Thank you.
Do you have anything you want to say? She was yapping yesterday, but she's okay today. She's in a better mood.
No, nothing to say.
Just-
Hope you guys like it.
Just a sweetie now, right? Okay.
Because it's done.
Okay, I'll see you guys later.